I think that in terms of my vision, I want to focus on a very strong human-centered approach in everything that we do. I also want to make sure that we elevate the University of Pretoria standing globally beyond what it is at the moment. Institutions must also look at where they're situated. It is where they're place-based. And we are in South Africa, on the African continent, and we need to play a crucial role in developing the continent. So I want to see the University of Pretoria as that leader when Africa matters, for Africa, for the world as well.
Hello, Sawubona, Dumelang, Vuchandet, and welcome to the LeadUP Podcast. I'm host of the show, and I'm Lennox Wasara. So great to be in your company at this moment. I'm sure you've heard the informal phrase go around, my boss's boss's boss. That's right, speaking to senior leadership, right? Today we speak to the Vice-Chancellor and Principal of the University of Pretoria, Prof Francis Petersen, who joins me on the show. We're actually in our final episode of Season 4, so very thrilled to be speaking to him. But academically speaking, he holds a PhD in engineering with special interests in chemical engineering as well as metallurgical engineering. Also his track record in previous positions where he was a Vice-Chancellor at the University of Free State and several other senior executive positions in academia. But it's not all about academia as well. He's also got a blend of industry experience. He's also headed up strategy for Anglo-American Platinum, and he's a true champion for community engagement, research, and inclusivity. So welcome, Professor Francis Petersen, to the show. Prof, good to have you here.
Good afternoon, Lennox, and it's good to be here. Good to be on the show.
So I was thinking about when you joined the University of Pretoria, I was thinking, do you actually get like first day jitters? What's it like being at the University of Pretoria? Because you went from transition from the city of roses to the city of jacarandas. So how's it been for you?
Yeah, starting a new job, there's always butterflies in your stomach. And I think it needs to be there because otherwise you are too comfortable walking into a new job. So that was there at the beginning when I started. But because I do know higher education, I've been in higher education institutions before and worked a lot with the sector, that gives you confidence to be able to walk in a position such as the Vice-Chancellor. And the fact that I spent 7.5 years at University of the Free State as Vice-Chancellor also assisted me. So to a certain extent, it's a balance between the two. Butterflies in the stomach, but confidence that you can do it.
And I think the confidence has come over the years, all the stuff that you've been able to do. But when you think about being at the University of Pretoria, you think about there's a huge staff component, there's a huge student base, there's also an incredible number of alumni that have come from the University of Pretoria. I know that in my introduction, I said a lot about what you've been able to do and who you are. But just for our audience, how would you introduce yourself maybe at a party or something and perhaps, just start to get to know the man behind the VC's desk?
So I'm actually a person that wants to interact with people. It doesn't really matter what forum it is. So that will be one of the things that I would do also in a party environment. I'm also a type of person that interfaces with everyone. So it doesn't matter who you are. I'm also very calm and collective in a way. Probably would say the collective part wouldn't necessarily fit into a party environment, but somebody that wants to engage with the ambiance, with the people, and a very relaxed person. So you would find that if I have opportunities that might be rare to relax formally in a party environment, that's the type of person that I would be.
Okay. And Prof, so I met you at the Mail and Guardian Top 200 ceremony earlier this month, and you were speaking about you said something that was profound, which I made note of. And you basically said that leadership is not about control or dominance. And I found that to be very profound, and I thought I'd bring it up here today just to dig in a little bit more into your leadership philosophy.
Yeah, leadership is not really only about you as the individual. I think my philosophy is that how can I, while I'm in a leadership position, assist others to develop? Because if you do that, you will strengthen the environment that you are operating. So my task as a member of a leadership team, and in a specific case, the leader, would be to create that environment, to say, well, what is needed? Because I know if I do have strong people around me, you would be able to better your organization or institution. You can probably call it servant leadership if you want to use that terminology. But I always are very much interested in the person. And then if you multiply that person, you get a collective. That is how I interact. It's not about me. It's about what role I could play to help others, because I know if I do that, they will also help me to be able to achieve whatever goal I have as a member of a leadership team for the institution or the organization.
And being selfless, really, and leading with that sense of humility, it's not always common that executive leaders are like that. What do you think enables you to be that way?
I think it's probably a combination of factors. I think upbringing is a key component of that. And I don't think you should ever underestimate experience. One of those key moments for me was when I was at Anglo-American Platinum. And one of the portfolios that reported to me was community engagement, the communities surrounding the mines. And in a specific area, we had communities from the traditional part of the communities and then a normal, that is part of a democratic structure, award systems and a structure that reports through municipalities. And specifically the traditional structure, I had engaged with the chiefs and the horses.
Yeah.
And with the problems, or the challenges that they had with the mines, I was often called in to come and listen. And there I've heard, you go sit under a tree on a stone as an Anglo-American executive, and you're not allowed to speak first.
Wow.
You must sit there and listen, but very importantly, you must hear. And I think to a certain extent that moment brings you very much close to say, it doesn't really matter who you are, you're engaging with other humans and other human beings. That always reminded me that it's really about the people. And I must say that specific moment have also shaped me in terms of what servant leadership is all about.
I'm sometimes guilty of maybe listening to respond, and sometimes I talk about active listening just to understand, as you said. And I think that's very powerful because it's unlocked a certain layer within you that's taken your leadership to the next level.
Yeah.
And you've obviously been in multiple roles in academia, and then obviously high-level roles in academia and also in corporate as well. So when you think about your experiences in both sectors, what would you say has been the key things that you would say have been pivotal moments for you to drive change in those environments?
Yeah. So in all of those organizations, there have been different things. The one in the mining industry, it was for me, how do you impact institutional culture in relation to safety? Because safety in mines and mining operations has been crucial. You can talk about it, you can say this is the rules, but you still have people that doesn't follow it. And it was important for me to understand why that's the case. So understanding it and then shaping it obviously with the team, it's not only myself, impacted the way in which safety management and the way that employees look at safety, how that has changed. Now that is very important, specifically you look at institutional culture in organizations.
Right.
So that was for me one of those pivotal moments to understand what are the key drivers. The others is related to strategy. Now, strategy is something that's very dear to my heart, something that I like, systems thinking, strategic foresights, and where we needed to reshape the entities that belongs to the Science Council sector. So typically MinTech, the CSIR, NEXA, the Agriculture Research Council, where there were funding that came from the state, and that funding was coming down. And they have to renew themselves as organizations. And for me, to be able to apply strategy, to say, well, how would different business models look like for that? Not only to renew the model how they would operate, but also for them to partner with other entities in the economy, in the system of innovation that they traditionally didn't do. And that was also for me a pivotal moment in terms of shaping how different entities, different activities could actually link up, partner with one another to develop or produce a goal that is much more impactful. So those are two things. There's a couple of others, but I think those were the sort of moments that really triggered also the way in which I apply my management principles and leadership principles in organization.
Sounds like you've had a journey of lots of learning, unlearning, and relearning as well.
Absolutely.
I think it's pretty difficult to do that at times if one is sort of like using to a certain, if you speak of strategy, if you use a particular way of doing things and it works all the time, it's always sometimes difficult to look outside the box.
Yeah, and I think there is where you always have to surround you in a leadership team with people that know more about you in certain areas. Because if you don't have that, you're going to find it difficult that other people could challenge you. And everybody has blind spots. And I think a strong leadership team, people that knows more about you in certain aspects, helps you to see the blind spots that you've got. And that willingness to be able to listen and to hear, remember that Anglo-American Platinum experience, can also help you to think through something that you might come into a meeting or into a platform with a specific idea, but you listen and you hear and you suddenly, your idea is probably not the idea that is going to yield the sort of outcome. But that's the point that you refer to, Lennox, that you must have the ability to accept that I can change my idea. I can compromise based on the facts that I've listened. And that is something to do with your inherent characteristic of tolerance and understanding. And once again, you can say you're born with it, but I also say you have to mature that through learning and experience and unlearning.
And then bring it to the University of Pretoria, very clear to what I've sort of gathered, having attended some of the events you've spoken, as you're sharing your vision with many stakeholders in the university, just around the fact that you really want to take the university to greater heights. And I just want to give you an opportunity just to maybe share with our audience as to what that vision looks like from your perspective.
Yeah. So one of the things that is great is that the University of Pretoria has a solid foundation. I often say solid foundation physically in terms of the assets, the physical assets, buildings, but also academically. We have students that are inspiring and they also have great aspirations. And then we've got staff that is genuinely loyal. And I think they all shape towards a future-focused approach. Now, if you have that foundation, it's easier to say, well, so what is the vision that you do have then? And how do you capitalize on that foundation? So one of the things that I think is important for me, it is about inclusivity and a human-centered approach. So how do we make sure that our relationship with one another, students among students, staff among staff, is not transactional, but is based on the human being. And that's an institutional culture change. The element of safety that I referred to earlier, that culture change experiment that we did in the mining industry, that I will utilize also as a sort of experience. So I think that in terms of my vision, I want to focus on a very strong human-centered approach in everything that we do. I also want to make sure that we elevate the University of Pretoria standing globally beyond what it is at the moment. Institutions must also look at where they're situated. It is where they're place-based. And we are in South Africa, on the African continent, and we need to play a crucial role in developing the continent. So I want to see the University of Pretoria as that leader when Africa matters, for Africa, for the world as well. So it's a global intellectual meeting point or hub on Africa issues, African matters, for Africa, but also for the world. And then I want to leverage technology much more. That's an area but really transform our thinking in technology leverage right through the organization, not only in certain aspects. And then final focus would be on what is the impact of the university's activities on our society. How do we better the life of our society through our teaching and learning, but also through our research and our innovation? And That I will use or focus on using the foundation that I sketched earlier. And that's the vision that I've got for the University of Pretoria.
That's a very interesting vision as well, because you're also very strong in strategy, and I think it blends nicely in the sense that, in a world with very limited resources and resource constraints, we still need to get the same outcomes.
Absolutely.
With very little. Good luck, because that's pretty tough. But to bring in Enterprises UP, which is basically offering people an opportunity to further their education more on a part-time basis and short courses and so on. And it brings an interesting conversation around micro-credentialing, which I think a lot of people who are stuck in corporate jobs or who are stuck and who are practicing might value that, because that would allow them to hone in more on a topic and possibly get those credits gradually to eventually get to a degree. How important is that for the University of Pretoria moving forward, as that's also very topical right now around the world?
Yeah, University of Pretoria is, as you know, the largest contact university in South Africa, and we would continue to offer our structured degrees. But I think we'll be short-sighted if we don't see how the future world of work is evolving, and do we keep pace? So UP Enterprises is hosting the micro-credentialing at the moment, and we should continue with that, but we should try to see to what extent that micro-credentialing, creating credits to be able to move into a formal qualification. So that alignment between micro-credentialing and the formal curriculum would be, for me, very important to explore. And then secondly, with the micro-credentialing, it will also be important to bring other actors that traditionally wasn't part of the university, that sits in the companies, sits in organizations, learning organizations outside, to bring some of their expertise in through micro-credential. And I often say that universities mustn't think that they're the only custodian of knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge that are sitting in learning organizations outside of academia. Through micro-credentialing, that is also an avenue to bring some of that knowledge into the institution. So that's a sort of future thinking, but for now, we want to say, as an institution that evolve, micro-credentialing, when you sit in enterprise, it can also create the sense that it is a business opportunity, and we use it as a business opportunity, but I think the longer term outlook would be to say, well, how can we bring it into our curriculum so that it actually enhance our formal curricula that we offer as University of Pretoria.
I see. Complementary effect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And talking about, with the fact that, we mentioned earlier that resource constraints makes a lot of things pretty difficult. And I think it brings in the whole conversation of partnerships very, very important in terms of helping us to get to that level. As I think now, I know UP has got so many partnerships. One I'll mention now is the Mastercard Foundation, which I'm a beneficiary of. And I was just wondering, from your perspective, Prof, how do you see the value of partnership between the university and the private sector and the third sector to make sure that we get those outcomes?
Institutions nowadays, in their business model, partnerships need to feature very highly in their business models. I can't foresee the University of Pretoria going forward without an exponential growth in partnerships, for maybe a few reasons. The one is resource constraints. That's a way of making sure that you expand that resource constraint. The second one is to make sure that the challenges that's out there, which can't necessarily be solved by one discipline or by one angle of understanding, you have to bring some of the others in, and you co-create solutions. So that for me is also very important. And the third one, as you say from my bio, you would see that I have worked in higher education. I've worked in academic universities, universities of technology. I've worked in the Science Council sector. I advised about 5 ministers in government. And then I also work in the private sector. So when I looked at it as a system of innovation. It's all these different actors.
Yeah.
And I can see the connection points very clearly. So our role now is for UPs to maximize that.
I want to bring in conversations around every year at the beginning of the year. There's a huge problem around student funding. It's a conversation that's been had for a while, and I know NSFA's model has also changed over the years. But I just wonder your thinking around that, when every year we'll sort of get to that more holistically. What's your thinking around those problems?
Yeah, so student funding has been a challenge. At the University of Pretoria, our challenge probably is not so much with NSFAS. We got probably about 27% of our students that are NSFAS supported. A large percentage of our students fall in the missing middle, so they're not eligible for NSFAS funding. And I was part of a task team the last 2 years where we developed a comprehensive student funding model that supersedes the NSFAS model that we presented to the Minister and also to Cabinet. And that model will take into account the missing middle and even beyond the missing middle. It's been implemented, but I think there's still some finer developments that need to happen. So that is some of the proactive ways of trying to deal with student funding. We as a university also do rebates, try to get bursaries, and the university contribution with rebates and try to get bursaries last year was over 2 billion that we contributed to that. And we will continue with talking to companies, talking to foundations. You mentioned the MasterCard scholars. They have also contributed quite massively at the postgraduate level, and that conversation will continue. So it's something that we're doing proactively, but with the economy that's up and down, that remain a challenge. Yeah. But that's one of our key foci within the university to say that if we accepted a student that is academically eligible, we should not have finances to stop that student to study. And we will try our utmost to ensure that we do get funding to be able to support the student. And that's part of our primary strategies.
And Prof, we live in an economy that has faced with a lot of problems, economic challenges, and one of the ways that it plays out is high unemployment rate. What are you thinking around preparing graduates to be real world ready, to actually face those kinds of challenges? I know entrepreneurship is one of the solutions, but I just wonder what your thinking is around there.
Yeah, so you talk about entrepreneurship. It is about, I think it's a combination of the two, or there's a combination of interventions that we're doing. The one is how do you look at self-employment, and entrepreneurship is quite important. But it's more than that. Entrepreneurship focus on initiative. It look at how do you think innovatively, out of the box, taking risks. And some of those attributes are also important in some of the graduates that work in a formal environment. So it's important how do you integrate the entrepreneurial characteristics into your formal curriculum so that more students can have those attributes. So self-employment is important, but also to make sure what do we do not only in the curriculum, but what do we do beyond the curriculum to transition students into a formal job market. And that's an area that is not only applicable and concerning for institutions in South Africa, that's a global issue. And we try to see how we engage with the industry, look to see how we can bring in the sort of micro-credentialing that we talked about earlier. Also try to see to what extent we could, if you have people from the industry teaching on our formal course, then that gives them an opportunity to judge our students. And then obviously the curriculum is for us quite important. We also focus on what I would say global citizens. So it's not only preparing the student for work at home, but how do you bring in issues that happen elsewhere on the planet and bring in speakers, either Nobel laureates or people that's from the IMF, the World Bank. Try to catalyze thinking amongst our student cohort and complement that with debates and conversations. So the co-curricular space, together with the curriculum, the formal curriculum, we look at critically to be able to say, well, how does that enhance the transition into a formal sector, the transition into self-employment, but also to say if there are students that want to work outside of South Africa, how do we facilitate that as well? And then formal exchanges that we have also help with the transition into other cultures in other countries. Yeah. That's the sort of the environment that we have plotted to all support students that leave with a qualification and to say that they are in fact settled And employability is for us quite important.
And Prof, like I said, it's our final episode of season 4, so it's been really lovely to have you here. We've had several of our alumni who have joined us, and I just want to play a few clips for you, just so you can hear just a short soundbite of some of the things that they said about the University of Pretoria.
Okay, thank you.
For me, it's a privilege to go onto campus and to be able to be part of an academic institution, because for me, it's a foundation of the society that we live in.
Still on the Tux campus, basically 12 years later, and I'm still here. That's the amazing journey about it, is it might have not started off in a good space, but where we are now it's a place that I call home.
And when you get to Tux, it was such a great learning curve, and I'm so appreciative. It's an institution that's so close to my heart because I made amazing friends there. It was lovely. I love Tux for that.
So, Prof, we heard from Abdullah Varashia, we heard from Tatiana Smith, and we also heard from Clement Manyatela as they're sharing their experience. Just your initial reaction to that?
No, fantastic. And I really appreciate the fact that their experience at Tux has been so great, so that they actually become ambassadors for the institution, for UP. And I'm pretty sure that there are many thousands of graduates that are now alumni that probably would say similar comments, and that's heartwarming to hear that, and that inspired us as leadership to do more to ensure that student experience and what we offer to our students is crucial. Although staff and the staff experience is also very, very important, because if we don't have good motivated staff,
Sure.
Our alumni probably wouldn't be able to say what they're saying now.
And Prof, just final thoughts on my side, just what legacy would you like to leave here at the University of Pretoria?
I talked about the vision earlier, and if I have to summarize that, it is really to move to a University of Pretoria that is inclusive, that is academically strong, that is human-centered, but produce output that can make a meaningful impact on our society, and that is built on the premise of excellence. Now, the legacy for me would be to say, well, how can you take UP to the next level? But very important is that UP ultimately is its people. And we must never forget that. It must never be transactional to get to that vision, because that's not going to be sustainable. You need to take the people with you. And the people are the staff and the students. So my call for staff and students is to say, let's take hands on this journey and let's work together to be able to achieve that outcome. And that should be the sort of legacy that I would like to leave here at UP.
Incredible, Prof. Thank you so much for your time today. It's lovely to be here on this incredible venue. And thanks for making time and also just connecting with the University of Pretoria community.
Pleasure, Lennox. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our conversation. If I could sum it up, I would basically say, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, we've got to go together. As you heard it from our Vice-Chancellor and Principal, who shared his vision with the University of Pretoria. Looking forward to the many years ahead for the university. And remember, if you haven't caught up with some of our previous episodes, we're available on all platforms, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And also remember, if you're a Tux alumni, we've got the UP Alumni Mall, so you can get some of the incredible merchandise there, so that you can stay connected with your alma mater. But from my side, it's nothing but love and light. Remember that this podcast is a proud production of the Alumni Relations Office, and our head of content is Dr. Samantha Castle, whilst our producer on the show is Alna Schutz. And of course, the audio-visual quality that you've seen here is brought to you by Maropa Productions. Thank you so much.